the biggest driver of society, right? Everything starts with ideas, some very concrete things. Somebody at some point, many, many years ago said, I'm going to create something where you get in and it transports you from A to B, right? That was a creative idea. And then it developed into the car, then it developed into the airplane, then developed into the space shuttle. But it was a creative idea. Creativity is in everything. And you said something actually, and I'm happy you said it, because now I'm gonna incorporate, I'm gonna borrow it from you, Tamara. Creativity in leadership is critical.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, leadership is most of the time about leading people, and people are different. Some have strengths, some have weaknesses, and great leaders are the ones that creatively overcome these challenges and bring everybody together. So creativity is in everything you do.
Hey everybody, Tamara here. Another great episode of With Tamara Gondor. That is me. This is the place to be, the podcast to listen to if you are looking to elevate your game, play peak performance, and leverage the power of innovation to stand out in a crowded, cluttered, competitive world. What we do here is we interview everyday innovators, people like you and me, ordinary people that are achieving extraordinary things because they've tapped the power of innovation. And today's guest is absolutely no different. In fact, you're going to get so much out of today. So let me tell you about my guest, Shafik Mina. He is the founder of Crayola, Imagine Arts Academy, and Mad Science. So these are programs that are across the country that actually teach kids creativity. What do I mean by that? It helps them problem solve. It helps them think differently. It helps them imagine new possibilities, critical thinking, collaboration, respect for diverse opinions. Such powerful programs. And whether you are a parent, have kids, are an aunt and uncle, are a kid, or none of the above, you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. Like I said, the focus of the conversation is around kids and how to teach kids creativity. But you and I both know that we as adults have a lot to learn from our kids and how we work with them. So this conversation goes in a lot of different places because we're talking about youth and youth programs. And then we actually translate that into the work world, into leadership, into solving problems, being entrepreneurs, being intrapreneurs. So there's a lot to this conversation. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about Shafik Mina, because he's an everyday innovator like you and me. He is an inquisitive collaborative. Those are the two power triggers that make up his unique and powerful everyday innovator style. So what does that mean? Well, the inquisitive, and you can hear these in the conversation, the inquisitive is all about innovating by asking questions, digging deep, challenging assumptions. And you'll hear that as he talks about how to challenge the assumptions of how we teach creativity in the classroom and how we manage it in the workplace. He's also a collaborative, which is all about, he innovates by pulling disparate people and ideas and experiences together to create whole innovation. His entire business model is based around this. I love it. All right, let's get to the interview. Hey everybody, Tamara here. Really excited for today's interview. So we're going to get into it pretty quickly. But I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited about our guest today and the discussion. You all know that I focus in the space of human-centered innovation, and it's my belief that innovation is something that should be accessible to everybody, and that we all actually do have the skill. It's just dormant in some of us, and it just takes practice and intention. Well, that all starts with kids and with youth and giving them the skills of innovation and creativity, problem solving, critical thinking. I would venture to say that I don't think we do enough of that in our education system. I think oftentimes at home, I will own this up as a parent. Sometimes when my kids get super curious and they're asking me a million questions, my inclination is to be like, not right now. Can we deal with this later? And that's really kind of shutting down their curious, creative mind because we're busy, right? I'm trying to get dinner on the table, whatever it is. But at every turn, it seems like we are actually pulling away this incredible skill from kids, yet it is so essential moving forward in a world that is constantly changing, that is becoming more complex. So with that, Shafik, welcome to the show. I'm really excited with everything that you do with youth and creativity and that, like I said, because creativity can be defined in a lot of ways with critical thinking and problem solving and all of that. So we have a lot to talk about today. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Tamara. I really love what you do because I'm very passionate about the subject of creativity and the importance of it, not just today, but I think in the future, it's going to be a huge differentiating factor. So it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So it's a pleasure to be here and talk about it.
So let's start high level with a question that sounds in some ways obvious, but I think it's important to have the discussion. And it's kind of twofold. One is, why has creativity become such a lost or neglected skill? And why does that matter so much? Why is it so important, especially for the next generation of kids growing up?
So awesome. So we actually stumbled on the answer to that completely. When we were launching our second franchise system, Crayola's Imagine Arts Academy, we did a lot of research, and our goal was we're trying to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. How is our program going to be different? And so we did a lot of research around creativity, the arts, and what we discovered is that there is this myth that exists that some people are creative and others not.
Yes.
Right? That's completely not true. Completely. And what that myth perpetuated is, well, if you're creative, awesome. Well, then you're an artist or an inventor. Then you got it. And if you don't, well, don't try to be. Right.
Right.
And that's the biggest disservice we've done to ourselves. And what we discovered is creativity really is like a muscle. The best way to explain it's a muscle. The more you work out the muscle, the stronger it gets. The less you work it out, well, the less strong it is. So that's, I think, how creativity has become neglected. It's been kind of sheltered to a small group of people, and you hope to have it, right? You're lucky to be born creative or not. And then we've never actively tried to develop it in those that don't have it.
So I'm so excited because listening to you is like listening to myself, which is so great. Because we are all about the everyday innovator. So our language is a little different. We're dealing with adults, but it's again goes to what you're saying about this myth that innovation or creativity is for some and it's not for others. Like you're born with this magical skill or you're not. And I want to add something to what you said and get your perspective on it. I also think, and you kind of articulated this, that we see people who are creative, that their only outlet for that is something artistic. Photography, painting, dancing, acting. We don't see it as being a stronger leader, doing my Excel spreadsheet, cleaning the house. There's so many other ways, right? That skill is so many other places is important, but we tend to put it not just for certain people, but also certain applications.
Absolutely. And that's, again, probably the biggest disfavor we do to creativity. Creativity is to me, probably the biggest driver of society, right? Mm-hmm. Everything starts with ideas, some very concrete things. Somebody at some point, many, many years ago said, I'm going to create something where you get in and it transports you from A to B, right? That was a creative idea. And then it developed into the car, then it developed into the airplane, then developed into the space shuttle. But it was a creative idea. Creativity is in everything. And you said something actually, and I'm happy you said it because now I'm gonna incorporate. I'm gonna borrow it from you, Tamara. Creativity in leadership is critical.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, leadership is most of the time about leading people, and people are different. Some have strengths, some have weaknesses. And great leaders are the ones that creatively overcome these challenges and bring everybody together. So creativity is in everything you do.
Yeah, that's why I get really frustrated when people talk about in painting. And that's all great, but that's not the only place. So I read this study once, and I'd love to get your perspective on this because I think that part of the challenge with, particularly for kids, for youth, is that there tend to be accidental negative consequences to being creative, right? You're being disruptive, you are not following the rules, I need you to do it this way, kind of all these things. And I think that happens in school, and I think it happens at home as well. I think we're all guilty of that. So the study was basically said that, and I wrote about this in my book, I thought it was so fascinating. Teachers ranked top skills that kids need, and creativity was, if not one, it was one of three. And the top. And then they ranked their kids in terms of how they thought their kids had on all these different skills. the ones that they ranked highest in creativity, they also ranked the lowest in likability. And I thought that was fascinating because, and I don't blame, I mean, they're dealing with 30 kids in the classroom. You're trying to rally. Like I have a lot of empathy and respect for teachers and being with kids all day. And I thought that was a fascinating insight into how we treat people who show or try to flex that creative muscle, to your point, as they grow up.
Yeah, well, it's because it's easy to put them in a box and see these are the creative people. Yeah. They're not normal, and they take a little more effort, or they're more challenging. And that's you've first of all, that's not true. All of us are creative. Just some of us show it more, and others. Some of us have learned to develop that skill and use it, and others not. So I think we're doing a disfavor to box creative people into that box. I think the challenge should be, let's get everybody to be as creative as those people, and you won't have the issue of having to box them. But it is challenging. It is challenging because creativity at its essence is about pushing the borders, right? And pushing the limits, talking about things that seem strange or unachievable. Right. And in a school environment, and I love teachers. I love teachers. Our business is with teachers, and I understand the challenges they have. And part of their challenge is they're under-resourced, underfunded. And now we're telling them, hey, listen, you got to take that extra step and give these kids room to grow and express themselves, and it'll be different because there's 30 kids in the class. Each one will have a different idea, and that's okay. That's awesome. So we got to help teachers and give them the environment that they need to be able to overcome this squashing of creativity that happens.
A question about something you said earlier on, but I don't want to lose it. You said you think creativity is a differentiating point.
Well, yeah, that goes to your question at the beginning, right? You said, why is creativity important? I think creativity is important because in the future, we're developing all these technologies. I call it technical technologies, right? You're going to go in, and your doctor might be a robot, right? Your mechanic might be a robot. The person who makes the thing that makes the sandwiches at the fast food restaurant will be a robot. So the differentiating factor will be not the technical skills, the how-to. It will be the creative power of the individuals, because that's something robots will never have.
Yeah.
Right? You can tell a robot, if A happens, do B. And if B happens, you do C, so forth. But the creativity to think outside of the box, that's probably the last trait that human beings have that will differentiate us. And I think it will be when 30, 40 years from now, when we look at successful people, we're going to identify that trait. That's my kind of guess into the future. That's going to be the trait that's going to make people successful. Their ability to tap into creativity, critical thinking, out of the box thinking, these kinds of things.
So I love that. And I'll tell you, I was meeting with an accounting management group. I was speaking for them. And one of them kind of pulled me aside. It was one guy from the board. And he said, Tamara, what's interesting is in 5 years, we won't even need accounting degrees the way they are today, because computers can now do like the baseline stuff that we get paid to do. And at first I just thought, oh my God, that's horrible. And he said, it's a wonderful thing because now I get to be strategic and innovative, where before I was stuck in the weeds. So I think this automation that's happening can be a really exciting thing, because it allows, to your point, for us to play in that space that we are as humans incredibly good at, which is thinking differently, right? We get that skill that technology doesn't. I'm curious, because I am 100% and then some on board with you that all people are creative. And it is a matter of, it's like a muscle, and we need to give it fuel and exercise it. And if we don't, it becomes weak, and then it feels hard because we don't do it. And then except for, in my world, it's like the 2 p.m. brainstorm with the scented markers. That's exhausting, right? To be not creative all day and go in there. How do we help people for kids? How do you get them to see that they have this beautiful creative mind, if maybe they're on the other side of that spectrum in terms of their muscle being developed?
That's awesome. So this is, you've nailed it on the head. This is what Crayola Imagine Arts Academy tries to do. But it starts with a precondition. And the precondition is you try, and this is something as parents and as adults we typically do to kids, which is try to predetermine the outcome. Right? You want the outcome. You're focused on the outcome. You got to get there. And that's, to me, an inhibitor of creativity. If I set the limit on where your brain can go, I can set a few parameters, say you got to do this and that. I'll give you a concrete example. But if you set the desired outcome and you box them in, well, then you've not let that muscle develop. So we have, and by the way, one of the most agonizing things for me is when they developed this program, I kept saying, oh God, I wish this existed when I was a child. I was so sad of that, but I was so happy for my kids. But we try to nurture the thought process that allows you to work that muscle. So I'll give you one example, small one. One of our programs is called design thinking. So we teach the kids the concept of design thinking, whether they're designing the cover of a comic book. So they'll design the cover of a comic book. But what we say is, you got to pick your superhero. You got to pick their superpower. The only condition, it has to be a positive superpower. And then you have to design. So another of those classes is they have to design a space station. And we say, okay, here are the parameters. There's no oxygen in the air, so people can't just kind of wander around. And there's gravity. So there's no gravity, so you can't be pulled out. These are your two parameters. Now you need to build a habitat for astronauts in space. So I just set two parameters, and then you let them go. And you don't say there's a right or wrong answer here. And it's unbelievable when you see like 7, 8-year-olds, what they come up with. And it's even more powerful when they walk you through their logic, right? And some of it doesn't make sense. Like some of it is like, okay, this doesn't work, but that's not the point of the exercise at all.
Right.
They say, okay, well, I created this. I created a big balloon. Well, that creates the oxygen container. And now I put suction cups, and people will be able to stick to the side. And these are the kinds of things that it's less about the outcome. It's more about the process of thinking, okay, I have a challenge. I got to find a solution for it. What are my options? So these are some of the activities we do with kids to try and counter this kind of predominant thought that, no, what's the outcome? We don't care about the outcome. We're looking for the process of creativity.
So I just want to stop for a second, because I think what you're saying is so important. I want us all to really hear it, which is, and you said it kind of quickly, which is that you learn a lot from understanding their thought process. And I don't think that we take enough time in this world to understand how someone got to the answer they got to, whatever it is, young, old. I think we're so like, well, I do or I do not like that outcome, right? Whatever you're saying, I do or do not like it, versus like, how did you get there? And I have to imagine, particularly in that type of like, what a fun exercise for kids to do. But also you probably learn so much about that, like so many new ideas come out of their thought process, right? Not even just what they created.
Yeah, because they don't, again, you get as an adult, you have all these inhibitors that tell you, well, I can't do this, doesn't make sense. I can't do this. Kids don't have these inhibitors, right? They start with the process almost of anything's possible. And this is what we want to, this is creativity. Creativity, you have to start from anything is possible. Yeah, there's some limitations, but anything's possible. And then you narrow down that funnel till you get to a working solution. But that's the outcome, secondary. But it is fascinating. I mean, I love being in those sessions when kids are coming up with these ideas, because it's nothing you can begin to imagine. Right. They always surprise you for the better.
I think what you said is really revealing about, we have all these inhibitors. So we're coming from a place of having a specific vision in mind, like predetermined a little bit. And then we project that onto other people in their thought process as well. How do you think, I want to take it to parenting for a second. So I was telling you offline, I have 2 boys. They're 12, well, just about to be 13 and 16. And it's interesting to me because I'm in the space of innovation. So they have it a little rough around me because I'm always like, well, what kind of, like, you're frustrated? Is that an opportunity in disguise? Like, they're probably super annoyed with me because I'm always like, everything to me is an opportunity to innovate all the time and to problem solve. What can we as adults, maybe not just parents, what can we do to foster that, not just the skill, but the confidence in kids? Because I think when I look at when I look at my 12-year-old in particular, he's super imaginative, so imaginative. And I think part of his willingness to express it comes from confidence. Like, he's okay being wrong. He doesn't care if he gets the answer. Like, he's just excited to play. So what can we as the adults in this world, or what do you do in the program that starts with that confident side of it too?
Sure. So there's a couple of kind of principles we try to work around. First of all, failure has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
The word failure, the way we use it, has a failure connotation. What we try to drive the point is failure is one step closer to success. It's just a phase of getting to where you want to get to. So it's okay to fail. Fail is part of the learning process, right? So that's one. The other one is the outcome is secondary. The process is important. Go through the exercise. And the third one is not, and this is something as parents, and I'm as guilty of it as everybody is, not try to feed them the answer.
Yes.
Sometimes, like, you see it there, and you're like, go to the left, just to the left a little bit, and you're like, and you're like, and you have to kind of hold back and say, no, they're going to the right, and it's going to be wrong, but that's okay. They need to make that journey themselves. So step back and give them the space to fail again, and learn. And I think that's as we kind of went through the process of developing our programs, this was the undercurrent that we realized that helped make the child more comfortable in really pushing the limits of their thoughts.
What I don't know how to ask this question. What transformations have you seen in some of the kids that have come through your program? Because at least in the adult world, it's been my experience that when people realize how creative they really are and they start to apply it and the confidence goes up, it actually impacts a lot of other parts of their lives. It's not just they're better problem solvers. It has actually a profound impact on people. So I'm curious for kids what you've seen.
Well, and this is really where this is rewarding for me. Like, it's a passionate. I'm very passionate about what I do, but this is where you really say, okay, you know what? Of all the other things I could have done, this brings me a lot of joy. When kids create and they're able to express and explain their creation, two things happen. You build a tremendous amount of confidence in them because now they've done it and they want to show it with you. And when they're able to explain it to you, there's that extra level of pride. It's confidence and pride in kids. Yeah. And you keep reinforcing that message every class. You can imagine how that impacts their entire life, right? And it's actually very contradictory to what we said at the very beginning when we said, oh, the creative kids are this small group. You're doing this at large. You're telling the whole class, you're all creative and you're all able to do this. And it's very powerful. I mean, we do these things called KABs, Kids Advisory Boards. And what essentially that is we invite a whole bunch of kids in our target age group. And this is when we're developing the programs. And we put it in front of them and we let them do it. And kids are very honest. Like if the activity sucks, they'll tell you this was terrible.
Without any emotion.
Without any emotion. You could have been working on it for 60 hours. They just tell you, oh, this is boring, Yeah. But what struck me and it reinforced that we were on the right track is you get these kids, and there's always those kids in the group that are maybe shy or reserved, that don't, they're in their shell, and you put them in the room, and then by the end of the day, when they're explaining to the whole class, there may be 20 kids around them, and they're explaining to them what they built and why they built it that way or what they've created. That kid who at the beginning of the morning was quiet, looking down the floor, not making eye contact because they were shy, kind of just blossoms. And that to me is, oh man, that's a home run every day.
That's amazing. That just makes my heart happy because I think oftentimes, so I'm a extrovert. I could suck the air out of a room pretty easily. I could take up a brainstorm. I know that. I manage myself. But I think oftentimes people like me are the ones who are seen as more creative because we're more vocal. Mm-hmm. And the kids who are shyer or just more introverted or just, less strong in the communication skills for whatever reason, are not seen as much, but they have just as much, if not more, going on in their brains. It's just not they just don't have the place to express it. So I love programs like yours that give every type of kid an opportunity to express themselves, not just the ones like me who are like, let me suck the air out of the room.
No, I'm like you. I'm an extrovert. I agree. It's very rewarding, and it's funny because they'll go through that and they'll be super comfortable presenting, and then they'll go back to being their kind of more calm self, which is fine. But it's an avenue for them to feel very confident about what they did, and it's one of the many rewarding things of what we do. To be honest with you.
So I'm curious because as you were talking, this kind of came up in my head. I have to imagine that in a program like this, when kids are all expressing themselves, so I'm assuming they all work on the same challenge at the same time, like in like projects. Okay, so let's say they're building that habitat for space. They're all given the same instructions, and they're all kind of working through the same challenge, so to speak, and they're all coming up with different answers. I would imagine that not only does that foster your own creativity and communication and confidence and all that, but it also probably a positive side effect would be respecting and appreciating different opinions and different answers. Because, right, you got 10 kids in a room, you're gonna have 10 different habitats. One with suction cups, one that's all metal, one that's like attached to the moon. I mean, who knows?
Yes. I've seen them all.
Do you see that though? Because I do think one of the challenges with creativity, innovation is not just fostering in yourself, but also being open to the fact that also means that there's other ways of doing things.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's fundamental, right? With creativity, there's no one right way.
Yeah.
So it's also teaching the kids. So typically there's the kids that are very kind of scientific. I'll say, well, have we met all the limitations you've said? And we're like, yes, you have. But they get to see that there are many different ways to meet these restrictions, right? And there's many different variables. And, it's one of those kind of, there's a lot of undercurrent messages that we constantly repeat in the programs. There is no wrong solution, right? Maybe there's a solution that's not complete. It needs to be tweaked. It needs to take into consideration, but it is one of the possible solutions. So there's absolutely. I never thought about it. Actually, you pointed out it does bring that extra level of openness.
Yeah.
Right, to other options.
Okay, so I've got a question from the audience I want to read to you, which is let me pull it, make sure I got it right. Excellent. So I have kids and I'm a leader of a team. In some ways, I feel they're similar in terms of how I have to manage. LOL. Accurate, by the way. It's totally true. What can I do to help foster creativity? Like, what are some lessons from your program that I can apply in my world?
Okay, so two different groups, but the approach is fairly similar. So one of the things that I've learned in developing this program that now I bring to my leadership skills as a business owner who has 50, 60 people working for them is, especially the people that report to me, I try never to provide them the answer.
So hard.
When there's a problem, my suggestion is always, look, come to me with what you think is the solution. And then we can talk it through. And at the end of that exercise, if we still think it's the right solution, then awesome. But I never try to spoon feed them. I want them to get into the habit of thinking for themselves and solving problems themselves. So I kind of borrowed that from what we do with the kids and brought it into how I manage my team. And then, so that's one. Obviously, we start with whenever we're working on a project, the brainstorm, any idea, put it up there. It doesn't matter how crazy it is, put it up there. And then we kind of work our way down. So that's kind of what I do with adults a bit. But with kids, it's really the biggest differentiator is to not make them afraid to explore their creativity by telling them, oh, that doesn't work. That's not going to work. Right? That's like you've shut them down, right? Yeah. So you say, well, listen, how are you going to go overcome this challenge? What if we do it this way? And encourage them to try. I keep saying that: try, fail again, try again, and eventually you're going to get to the solution. I pretty guarantee. We work with NASA, and one of the astronauts that we were meeting with once said something very profound to me. He said, "Shafik, if you think we made it to the moon on the first try, then you have no idea. He said, we failed 1,000 times before we got there. And I said, I got to use that exact statement. It's exactly, they failed 1,000 times before they made it to the moon. Had they quit at 200, we would never made it there. Had they quit at 500, we never. They just kept going. And it's the same. You really want to, you want your kids to get that, right? It's okay. Keep going. It's okay.
I don't know if you feel this way, but I mean, I'm, well into my 40s, and I feel like that's life. Like, if you looked at my business today, someone asked me in an interview the other day, like, what is it like, having success so quickly? And I was like, I don't know. It was 20 years ago, a lot of coffee and a lot of mistakes. Like, nothing happens quickly. So I feel like that's just such a great life lesson for all of us, because that is, you fail, you succeed, you fail, you succeed. Like, it's just all part of the journey, and it just, it doesn't end.
You know what? Tamara, you're absolutely right. And I will even highlight that it's more important today, because I think one countercurrent we have to compensate for is instant gratification. Our kids now get instant gratification. Like it's there, it's in their hand, they get the result right there. And that adrenaline rush from being on screens is there. It's not bad. To me, screens are a tool we use. Yeah. But to get them to know that in reality, life is not like that. You don't become instantly rich. You work towards that, and you probably fail many times before you get there. Success is built on numerous failures, numerous challenges.
Yes. And figuring them out, right? Being creative along the way. Now, I want to ask you something, because what you just said, I think is actually really profound, and I want to dig into it for a moment. You said that instant gratification kind of works against creativity. Talk a little more about that, because I was just, as you were saying that, I was thinking about how my kids just go, hey, Google, what's the capital of blah, blah, blah? Or, hey, Alexa, what's the blah, blah, blah? And she's probably going to start going off in a minute because I said her name. I'm like, shh, don't listen to me, Alexa. But seriously, like, it's a very different world. And I don't know that there was a benefit of doing what I had to do, which is go to my Encyclopedia Britannica set that we had as a kid, or, it was a different way of finding answers. But high level, how does instant gratification, that this counter thing, work against us?
Well, I think there are things that there's a tremendous benefit of having the answer right away, right? Like, I'm not a believer. Like, I was trying to explain to my kids that when I needed to find something out, I had to actually go to this place called the library, find the topic, pull up the book, and they're like, what? Like, they're like, I can get it on Google. So I don't think that way was better, right?
Yeah.
So there's a place for instant results. It's what I'm trying to also get them to appreciate is there is things that will not be, the results won't happen quickly.
Right. And we're expecting them. We get lazy.
Yeah, this is going to be part of life. There's things in life it's not going to ask Google and Google's going to give you the answer, right? So you have to be prepared for that. Otherwise, you'll be disappointed that you didn't get the immediate result that you're used to getting. So this is the counterbalance I think we have to deal with instant gratification.
Right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. And I agree. I am a fan of being able to look up a recipe when I'm not sure what to do. I don't want to have to go searching for it. I'm a fan when my tire went flat of looking up how to change a tire, right? How much better for me is that? But I do see your point, and I hadn't really thought of it that way, that while there's a lot of benefits to it, it makes us a little bit, I want to say lazy, but it certainly changes our expectations, and then maybe dials up our quitting because we're like, oh, I didn't get the answer.
Well, I'll give you an anecdotal story for the benefit of you. I was talking to one of them. I have 3 kids, 15, 14, and my daughter's 10. And I was talking to my middle child, and he's kind of very focused. He in his mind, he just wants a career where he makes a lot of money. I said, okay, well, that's nice, but it's really not the end goal. But I'm trying to do the parenting moment and everything. And I said, well, how are you going to get there, right? And he's, wow, you said I need to go to university. Fine, I'll go to university. I'm going to get this thing, and then I'm going to make the salary I want to make. And I was trying to explain to him, well, you don't get out of university and walk into your boss office and say, I want to make $1 million.
Right.
It doesn't happen. I said, you're going to start off with a small salary. You're going to work. You're going to prove yourself. They're going to move up and move up. And eventually you're going to get there. And he was like, oh, what do you mean? Like, yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't just start. And that's to me where I said, oh, like, he's just used to, you ask the question, you get the answer, or you ask what you want and so I was like, okay, no, there's things in life that take time. And that's one of them.
Yeah. So that's a great advice lesson for all of us. So to really think about it, instant gratification, and when we are maybe quitting or not seeing the end goal soon enough, that maybe we're just working against this instant gratification that we've all gotten used to for just about everything, really.
Yes.
So I want to look back to your programs and talk about the Crayola Imagine Arts Academy and Mad Science. How do they partner with schools, teachers, organizations to bring, I don't want to say bring creativity to kids, because to your point, they all have it, to unleash it inside of them?
So I'll talk first about math science. So math science was built on the idea that science is fun. It's not this difficult topic that you're going to get confused about. Yeah. And I think it's one of the reasons we were very successful over the last 30 years. And we were appreciated by schools and teachers because we broke through that barrier that science is a difficult topic. And it's only for those that love science. It's not. Science is all around us, right? Yeah. What we try to do with Crayola's Imagine Arts Academy and working with schools, and we do after-school programs, we do workshops, we do birthday, we do summer camps. It's working with them, creating programs like I said earlier, help them work through projects where the technique of the art is irrelevant. It's the process. It's the mental exercise they go through to channel this creative thoughts. And then it becomes a habit. Once you've done it 12, 14 times, you are no longer focused on the outcome. You're focused on what you got, the process you've learned. And then you're pleasantly surprised that the outcome is just as awesome.
Yeah. So I have another question, which feels like this is exactly the right time to ask. So I'm glad the audience asked it now, which is, I've never seen this in my area. How do I get somebody to incorporate it, or what are my other options?
So if it's great question. Thank you. We have franchises all over the country, but there's some areas where we don't have franchises. If you're interested in bringing this program to your area, I suggest you go to our parent company website. It's the number 2, the word inspire.com. So 2inspire.com. You'll learn about both brands. And if you're an entrepreneur, you love working with kids and you want to kind of drive the next generation of leaders, check us out. And all the information is there. You can bring this to your area. Hopefully it's in your area already and your kids can benefit from it right away.
Do you work with programs like Boys and Girls Clubs or other community-based? Are you in school? Like, how does that work?
Sure. So absolutely, we work with the Boys Club. So typically, we would partner up with them and we would run a camp with them, or they would be running a camp and we would provide our services 1 or 2 days in the camp. We work with the Y. We work with pretty much all the elementary schools in a given area. We have some programs that even go as little as a preschool. We have preschool programs, both in the sciences and in the arts. We work a lot in community centers. Yeah.
So I love the work that you do. I think it's so important. And, I feel like we talked about this in the beginning about why it's so important. I do feel that, I'm a product of the 80s. We saw change in the 80s. We saw change in the 90s. I don't think it is change is just getting faster and faster, it seems. And I don't think that that's just a cliche. I think it's actually very true. And I'd say in the last 18 months, probably more shocking too. Like, it's amazing what can change overnight without you even without any input into it whatsoever. So it seems to me that ability to be creative, to adapt, and adapting to change is part of that, because you're able to see solutions and think differently and put the pieces together. And I think be more resourceful about what you have in front of you. Are you seeing that with either the kids or just in your world, how today's environment is kind of changing that need or that skill of creativity?
Yes. So we're noticing 2 skills that we touched on this earlier, but there's 2 skills that seem to be, we think are going to be critical in the near future, and that's creativity, and the other one is collaboration.
Yeah.
It sounds so cliche and it sounds so obvious to say it, but these are skills. Collaboration is a skill. You have to be able to work with people. You have to be open to their ideas. You have to be able to work around challenges as a group. It's easy when you're doing it on your own. It's another thing when you're working as a group. Yeah. And our world is getting smaller. right? A few years ago, for us to have done this, I would have been in the same building with you. Now we can do it at a distance.
To organize it and like it would have been a whole different thing.
Yeah, it would have been a whole different thing. Today, you can work with somebody who's on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So these are skills that are very important: collaboration, creativity. I think that's. It's funny because the kids join our programs for the fun, and the parents get their kids registered because they see the value of these kinds of things, and it's demonstrated. Like when the kid comes back to you home and talks to you about the project he did and who he worked with on it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, wow, this is, there's something happening here.
So I think I totally agree with you about collaboration. And I think it a little bit goes back to what we said in the beginning about creativity is not just for a select few. I think the other narrative that's wrong that's often out there is that like that inventor, that creator did it alone. And we even like, and I don't love to use people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk as my examples because that's not most of us, right? They're geniuses. It's a little bit of a different game, but we look at them and see them as these lone inventors who did it alone, but none of them have ever done it alone, ever. And we totally minimize and we don't put on the pedestal that part of it, the collaboration part of it. We just put on the pedestal the kind of maybe the person who's in the forefront doing it. And I think it's a disservice to all of us because it minimizes our desire for collaboration and we need it. We cannot do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we romanticize the inventor, right? The inventor creator, they're working in their basement alone. But that's not how it happens, really.
No.
Even more so today. Today, it's almost impossible, especially if you're developing something technological. There's so many specialities. You need a team around you. And one of the things I do that I enjoy very much is I mentor startups in my community. I feel good about doing it, and you can see the ones that are going to be successful are those that are building collaborative teams, and the ones that stumble, it's the guy who's very talented, has really strong, but he's thinking of it as a lone ranger, and it's so limiting. It's so limiting. So it's just to me, it's such a critical part of success moving forward. Collaboration and big breakthroughs like Apple. Apple didn't happen just with Steve Jobs. There were people around him that made it happen. Every single thing that is awesome today that you look at is not one person doing it on their own.
Yeah, and no family even works by one person on their own. Like, you know, if you have a family, like you actually need the rest of those people to get stuff done. It turns out. So yeah, no, it's so great. All right, so before we have to close out, where can people go to connect, learn more?
So I would encourage you to go to, if you're interested in the programs, it's mathscience.org, one word. If you want to see if it's in your area. For the other one, it's CrayolaImagineArtsAcademy.com. You'll find out if the program's in your area. And if they're not, and you're interested in bringing to your area, it's toinspire.com.
Okay, so I've got a last question from the audience that I want to ask you that I think is a great way to close out. So the question is, I have a teenager who is convinced he doesn't have and it's in quotes, creative bone in his body. What can I do as a parent, aside from allowing him to ask questions, experiment and fail like you were talking about? Is there anything else I can do to foster creativity in him and any of the other kids around me? Oh my gosh, I love that. Let me just tell you why I love that question, because I think I have two, and I would say one sees himself as like super creative and the other one's like, I'm by the book. And so what a great, and I think that's true as we get older. We know people who are like, yeah, I'm creative, and other people are like, yeah, I'm not. But to your point, it's a muscle. So great question.
So I would need to know a lot about your child, but what I would suggest is find something that he's very passionate about, he or she, they're very passionate about, and have them, and then work with them on a project that's related to that passion. Just it doesn't matter what the project is, because the project, by the nature of it being a project, will have some challenges. There's things that are going to be difficult to do, things that are going to be easy. And as he goes through those challenges, he will exercise his creative mind. Then when it's all done and the project is completed, hopefully, you will be able to point back and say, hey, remember when we overcame this challenge? Remember when you overcame, that's creativity. So you've got it. You've demonstrated that you've got it. And hopefully it will do two things. He will enjoy the project, but he'll also gain the confidence that he's creative and capable of doing it.
You just solved a problem for me, so thank you. My 16-year-old a little bit more by the book, like I said, but he's really excited about fixing up a car. And every time we see a junker in our neighborhood, like someone's left it out and it hasn't moved, he tries to buy it. We haven't been successful yet, but I think I'm going to really push that because that is his channel, at least seems to be. And you're right. I mean, he's even creative about going to try to find the car. He like drives the neighborhood. He takes the dog for a walk. Like he's always out looking for cars.
Yes, that's a great example, right? And then the showing them the rear view mirror, right? Once they're done, to say, hey, listen, how much effort did you put in finding that car, and you worked on it, and look what it looks like now. That's creativity was a big portion of that. So
So what I love about that too, that I think we should all just really pay attention to what you just said is, so you give someone something they're passionate about and they show a lot of creativity naturally, typically. What we miss then is connecting the dots of saying, look how you did it here. Let me put a spotlight on it and say how amazing this was. And then they really can like get that confidence and see that lesson of, yeah, I just did it. I actually have the skill and now I can apply it elsewhere. Like I think we forget to show kids, adults too, where they're doing it already so that they can build on that versus telling them they don't have it and they have to find it.
Yeah, because you're telling them like, you got to go start from scratch. And he's thinking, well, I don't have it, right? So what do you want me to start? But when it's something they like, they're self-motivated to do it. And then you're just pointing it out to them. Look, here, you had it here, you had it here, you had it there.
I love it. So this has been fantastic. And hey, if you're out there listening or on our live audience, first of all, thank you for all the questions. Second, go look it up and see if it's in your neighborhood and get your kids in there. And if it's not, go talk to your school and the Boys and Girls Club and whatever about bringing it or franchise it. I think that would be a huge disservice not to. I think we need more and more of these programs to partner with our schools to bring more of that creativity. So thank you.
Tamara, thank you so much. This was absolutely so enjoyable. Clearly two peas in a pod. We love talking about this. I had such a great fun. And I got to tell you, your audience is awesome because some of their questions were really good and challenging, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I'm happy to come back anytime you want me back. I loved it.
Good. Well, I would say to your point about creativity and it looking differently, I've learned along the way to allow more time for my audience questions because they're questions I wouldn't have thought to ask as I'm prepping and doing research. And oftentimes I think better than what I would have asked. So,
well, they were excellent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. It was so great.